I would like to have your permission to bring up Pastor Van Noy to address this topic and express his concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. Some of the comments and some of the uproar that came out of what apparently was a personal attack, I want to mention I'm not offended. My concern for the city has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the very real work in the spirit dimension.
Paul, if you could summarize your letter rather than read it word for word, since we've received it already.
I understand. I do understand that. I would, however, request that you allow me to read it all. I will read quickly, but I want it on the record. And so if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Okay.
Thank you. Dear Mr. Mayor, Jim Hammond, and City Council members, it's no surprise that the invocation and its handlings have come up for discussion. I recognize that our community has a variety of religious groups and that many religious leaders may want to offer an invocation. Therefore, the role and responsibility herein is best handled by the clergy, not by a city. The antagonism or the agnosticism or atheism of those who, quote, believe in nothing, end quote, does not change the reality of the spirit world. Fringe, anti-Christian, polytheistic, subversive, and or anti-American groups. Moreover, this decision would, in effect, be an official and intentional rejection of God. I strongly discourage this action. I must say, canceling the invocation altogether might be perceived as a demonstration of, quote, hostility, end quote, toward religious exercise.
What I'm hearing from the crowd and from you is that you would prefer Christian invocation.
Yes.
And we, as a government, are prohibited by the Constitution from discriminating against any religion.
Understood.
If we had a Muslim mullah come here and give our invocation, what would your thoughts be?
I would be terrified for our community.
You know, we can't disallow that.
You can't. I can.
So this is about your control?
This is about the Ministerial Association serving to protect the city.
Okay, well,
Our intention is to provide safety spiritually and legally. I would suggest that it is far better to allow us to continue the Judeo-Christian worldview that we have enjoyed in this country from the beginning. That's not to suggest that there have not been Muslims in our community, in this country, from the beginning. There have. But these kind of groups have not been what we would look to for the leadership of our country.
do you understand that while you say that's what you want, we don't have the luxury of discriminating against
Understood.
someone based on their religion?
I understand that, yes.
So you want it to be Christian. This is discriminatory. Would you be open to allowing someone who is a Mormon or a Catholic be a part of this and let them give an invocation?
I would suggest that we examine the Mormon doctrine and the Roman Catholic doctrine.
But that's not, we can't judge on anything like that.
You can't, I can.
But then what we're doing is we're just passing the buck to you and saying, oh,
Thank
don't
you.
blame us, blame this guy.
This is exactly what I want for you.
You cannot discriminate yourselves. You cannot delegate the task of discriminating to someone else.
Would you be willing to open up your ministerial association to other people, to women?
We have never turned anyone away.
You know, the Chaldean Church is a Christian church. They're based in Iraq. Most of them have relocated into this country, just about 2 miles from where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
They pray to Allah because Allah is the Arabic word for God. Are you okay with that?
I'm not. Allah has no son, neither is he a father. I'm quoting the Quran.
Well, I'm talking about Christians.
I'm talking about Islam.
Well, no, these are
Are we
Chaldeans, they're
talking
Christians.
about the same God? Now,
You
I
know-
recognize, Dan,
And that's
me.
it's your job to do that. I understand.
It
It's
is
your
my
to do
job
that.
to do
You know,
that.
we can't discriminate.
You cannot. I can.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Van Noy.
Christy, I understand that you are uncomfortable with this.
Very.
But please understand, my exercise of discrimination, and I do believe that discernment and discrimination is necessary today,
Oh my
is
gosh.
intentional for the protection of our city and its spiritual welfare.
We pass off onto you, and you are stating right now in a public meeting that you don't want, say, a Muslim or Hindu or anyone else who would not be of your particular, or Mormon, from your particular type of Christianity, what you define as for you, that we can't do that.
I understand.
And that opens us up to a lawsuit.
I understand.
So if we can do that, if all of a sudden we did have, say, a Muslim come in and want to do an invitation before the city council, and you said no, we can be sued. Is that something you're okay with?
Yes.
You're okay with us being sued?
Let me ask you a question, Dan.
Certainly.
If a Muslim intends to harm you if you do not convert to Islam, is that what we want to welcome in our community? Dan, have you read the Quran?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Familiar with the fact that they do pronounce upon us the title infidel, and forced conversion to Islam is a part of the agenda and doctrine of the Islamic faith. That is not freedom.
Well, I understand that it's as inconsistent as any religious text, but that's not why we're discussing here. It can't be discriminatory. I mean, when the traveling rabbis come through town, I think it would be great to have them come and do an invocation for us. I don't have a problem with that, because I don't see that in the same vein that you do. And I hope you appreciate and understand that.
I do. I do believe that we are actually invoking a spirit. And if that is the spirit of Islam, that is not a spirit I want in this community. Now, they should have the right to practice their faith, but to invoke a spirit upon you, I don't think so. I want to stand in the way of that kind of curse being placed upon you, Dan, because I care about you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions for Mr. Van Noy, but I would like to talk with Randy.
The Supreme Court in the Galloway case stated the First Amendment is not a majority rule, and government may not seek to define permissible categories of religious speech. Once it invites prayer into the public sphere, government must permit a prayer giver to address his or her own God or gods as conscience dictates, unfettered by what an administrator or judge considers to be non-sectarian. Once you decide that they are, then you cannot discriminate. The law is pretty clear that the city would be responsible for an agent discriminating, violating the Constitution, that represents the practice or policy of the city itself. That is essentially the act of the city. It's not going to insulate the city.
I mean, it's just not even part of the discussion to turn it over to the Ministerial Association. That decision was made, my understanding, within about 6 months ago. I'm going to have to set aside Mr. Van Noy's offer to regulate for us.
First comment, and I completely forgot this when I spoke with you, Pastor. I'm a minister. I actually have married people, just to let you know. Anyway, you can all become a minister. Not that it holds any credence with anything other than that organization. I do believe that religion is and must be an individual choice. And I believe it's up to the individual to claim spiritual ownership. Even though Pastor may fear that the demons will come for me, it is still my responsibility. It is my relationship. It doesn't belong to anyone else. James Madison, the founder, the writer of the Constitution, the architect of the Constitution, wrote that keeping religion and the state separate was essential to the purity of both.